Afternoon, people, what's going on? It is BKA Watts sitting here to have a fantastic, wonderful, informative conversation with my man's
John Johnson.
John Johnson. John Johnson.
That's my real name.
Do people call you JJ?
No.
Why? Do you have a nickname? This is random.
John B. Like the R&B
So I'm gonna say like the R&B singer?
Yeah. Okay. Don't know.
You smooth like that.
Yeah.
Yo, look, what in the
No,
world?
but it's mostly John Johnson. People just call me by my full name. I like to call people by their full name too.
It's so weird to me.
Yeah.
I know people like that. I'm not one of them. I call people by we call it their rap names. It's like whatever your rap name is, that's what we respect it. We call it.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
There's too much meaning in people's names, man.
But I think that's the important thing is the meaning behind the names. That there's a meaning behind the name that somebody gives you, but there's also a meaning behind what you want to identify yourself as. I guess, especially in this world, the way that we see.
And if they introduce themselves to me as their, whatever name that is, that's what I respect.
Same. There are those people who are full name people though who are like, yeah, whatever. What's your mama name? So I can put that in my contact log. Okay, that's fine.
That's usually Gen X or baby boomers.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So today we want to sit down and just talk a little bit about a small studio, about identity architecture. Pick the mind of the man himself, if you will, and we're going to start it out like that. I know that identity architecture is a significant driving force behind what y'all got going on, and I guess for the people who would be just now hearing the term, what is identity architecture? Is it a new thing, or is this something that you guys that already existed that you guys have put your own spin on to create something from?
Well, I started with doing brand consulting, right? So I was working with a lot of people and helping them understand their brand. And over time, as I worked with more and more founders, more and more leaders, I realized that I was doing a lot of work with them as individuals, intimately, right? Understanding their story, understanding the experiences that shape them into who they are, but also understanding the catalytic moments that led them to start their businesses that I was working with them on. And I'm like, this is so much more than just branding, right? And that's when identity architecture came to be. I got my background in architecture, got a master's in architecture, and
then decided not to do it.
I was like, yeah, exactly. but I wanted to bring the roots back because I realized I was actually really good at listening to people and understanding the words that they were saying and piecing them together and regurgitating them in a way that actually empowered them to move powerfully into the work that they were doing, empowering them to start, right? So back in 2018, I think, I traveled to Madagascar, Antananarivo, and
saw some interesting looking animals there. Sure.
I did.
Okay.
Giraffe beetle. You ever see a giraffe beetle?
It sounds horrifying.
It's spectacular, actually. It's really small, but it has this long neck like a giraffe. It looks like if a ladybug. Imagine a ladybug with a long neck.
Yeah. So I imagined a bug about the size of a giraffe with just crazy neck. So that sounds horrifying.
It was beautiful.
That's amazing.
Anyways, the people were even more beautiful. First place I ever went where I felt like I was like part of people. I got off the plane. I'm like, man, where's my dad at? Is he here? No. It was really special. And I went there and I taught these people how to look within themselves, right? To practice their work and become their work and look into their strengths, their values, so on and so forth. And that's when that trip really helped me realize like this is so much more than branding. This is something around helping people understand who they are, their identity, so on and so forth. So identity architecture is a human-centered praxis, right? A practice of sorts that helps people understand who someone is, right? Bringing together their attributes, bringing together their experiences that translates into their unique perspective. So I found out over a lot of the work that I've been doing, a lot of the experiences that I've had, that each person has a unique perspective on the world. So instead of trying to market yourself to be like whoever else is doing it, or, you know, be amongst these brands, it's like, yo, if you do enough work to reflect on who you are as an individual, right, then you're one of a kind already. And if you bring that into the world, that perspective into the world, it automatically sets you up into a competitive advantage of being different than all of the clutter that's out there.
That's true. I think that there are a lot of industries that push people to compare, though. So I think that that's a unique point for you and your team to approach your clients with and kind of shake up that mindset. So, for example, working in a lot of entertainment spaces, I found, for a really strong example, when you're attempting to get a film made, funded and produced, the studio wants you to come with a deck and say, here are the comparisons to what this is how we could closely relate this. This movie would be like if Mrs. Doubtfire and John Wick had a baby. There's always that. What are the comparisons? Because then they also want to say, all right, well, if this is what it's compared to and this was really successful and this is what it compares to and this is really successful, then we see how it can work.
And what's possible.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of the industries kind of force people into comparing themselves versus attempting to be individuals.
Well, this is a limited belief, though. Right?
Exactly.
It's a limited perspective, because, you know, the most successful things out there are not like anything else.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, that's what I try to tell my clients. Like, you got to become one of none. And just even saying that I'm one of none, it allows you to operate in a whole new atmosphere.
Oh, for sure.
So I was actually just I'm working with a client right now where he's developing a site here in Cleveland, and every other developer looked at this site and they all passed because it was going to be too hard.
Yeah.
Right. And they wanted to go find a low hanging fruit that would make it easy. And it's like easy to flip. It's easy to transition. It's easy to profit off of, because it's just like other things that have been done.
Yeah.
But when you have a unique perspective and you bring that unique perspective to a project, you can see all the possibilities that no one else can see. That's your competitive advantage as an individual.
Definitely.
As a founder, as a teammate, as a designer, it doesn't matter how you identify. Your biggest competitive advantage in anything that you do is the way that you see the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I don't really spend too much time worried about or focused about would-be competitors and my different industries I operate in. I just work, and I know, you know, and I don't have to speak down or negative on anybody, because at the end of the day, I can be right next to the person who does the exact same thing as I, and, you know, but what matters is which way does the person prefer it done? Which method, you know, what style, and mine is always going to be mine. So if they like my style, it's going to happen. I mean, you never see a McDonald's too far from a Burger King. They're always near each other. It doesn't matter that they don't. It's not that we need to be as far away from the competition as possible. No. Put us right here where the hungry people are. And if they like us, they're going to come to us. And that's how that goes.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. But to what you said a moment ago, you know, speaking of operating, well, most people will hear the term operating system, especially us in tech spaces, you think iOS, you think Android. Why is identity architecture referred to as an operating system?
I love that question. This is really exciting for me because, you know, I've been operating in the tech field for a long time.
For sure.
And that is how people typically think of it.
Absolutely.
But I like to think of an operating system as something that helps you to make decisions. Right. Not only helps you make decisions, it helps keep you consistent, right, in the decisions that you make. So as a human, as an individual, and we talk about your unique perspective, you have an operating system. That could be limiting beliefs. That could be, you know, thinking in abundance. That could be generational, right, impacts, then traumas that have been on you. It could be just, the experiences that you've had as you've been employed or started a business, whatever it is, they all come together to create your operating system as a human being, how your mind works, how you make decisions, how you
35,000 decisions.
35,000 decisions every single day.
Exactly.
Right. So how can you plug yourself into an operating system that helps you create consistently and authentically in everything that you do? And not only you creating consistently and authentically, but allowing your team that you empower and that you work with to create consistently and authentically for you and with you. Right. So especially for an early stage founder, they go out and they get help from a lot of different people. Right. Just me and you working together. Right. Hey, here's who I am. Here's how I need you to support me. Here's how I need you to help me. Here's how I need you to create with me. If you can give them an operating system that allows them to use their talents and use their gifts and plug it in, it allows things to align much better. Yeah. Right. It saves time. Right. It saves money. It saves the fatigue of having to figure it out as you go, right? So I've worked with so many founders and companies over the years that go out and get a marketing company or marketing agency and say, hey, we need more followers, or we need more engagement. We need better ROI on our investment, whatever it is. And then that marketing company has to come up with an operating system to create for those people, right? And every agency does this. Right, but how many people actually create one for themselves and give that to the people that they're working with, right? So I had a client, her name is Mary Tautimes. She's in Phoenix, and she was, as I was working with her, she was engaging Forbes for a book deal.
Okay.
And she was able to take all the work that we did with her through IDR and give that to this publishing company. And this publishing company's never seen a client come to them, an author come to them with a whole operating system as to who they are as an individual. And they were so pumped to get that from them because now it made their job even easier. They were able to create the book cover. They were able to do the edits appropriately. They were able to build the marketing campaign, all of that off of the operating system. Right. So that's why I look at it as an operating system, because it helps people create on your behalf or with you, no matter who they are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what project you're creating.
Yeah, I think that there's additional power in that, which you're a smart guy. I'm sure you see that. But when you put a client, anybody, in that kind of position where they have that much already in place and in position, when you're coming to somebody who, is a potential investor or someone, to get behind you or partner with, it definitely gives you a different tone. It gives you a different feeling, a different level of confidence to be able to come to somebody and say, this is what I already have. This is what I'm already doing.
This is who I am.
This is who I am. And it already works as is. And there's always going to be a different level of, like I said, confidence and empowerment with a person to be able to come to somebody and say, I could use you, but I don't need you. And that's a different kind of leverage to be able to have for somebody as well, to say, like, I don't need you guys to figure it out for me. I already know and have all this together.
Well, it actually, I like to think about it where it makes it more intentional about who you work with.
Absolutely.
I'm actually going to work with you, not because of how you're going to help me, but because you have this specific gift and you have this specific perspective that I'm missing, right? How many clients have you worked with that could clearly articulate who they were to you to help you use your gift and use your perspective to help them elevate?
It's not often. It's not common.
It's not common at all, ever.
No,
it's especially right now. So that's why I love this work, because I always tell people you need to reflect before you project. And if you're not reflecting enough, then you're most likely projecting something that's inauthentic to who you are. And it's not going to last. It's surface level. Right. Yeah. So the more you reflect on yourself, on your unique experiences, on the attributes that describe you, that you can identify with, so on and so forth, the much more powerful the things that you project out to the world are going to be, because they're aligned to who you are as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, like it's beyond that surface level. That's very important, specifically because, yeah, like you said, those things don't last. Those things don't last. I mean, I have people that come to me, you know, whether it be event ideas or it may be a podcast idea, whatever the case may be. People get the smallest crumb, the little tiniest flicker of a light bulb, and it's like, dive in. And I'm not mad at that. It's okay to go for something, but very often it's just figuring out if they're doing it for the right or the wrong reasons. And when people just dive at something, you know, because it's popular, because it's trendy, like you said, very often will not last. It's not something that'll work out in the long run, because it's not authentic, because it's not them. They're just doing it to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to take it even further, the idea of an operating system, it helps you even filter the ideas that are coming into your mind. Right? You make 35,000 decisions every single day. Think about how many thoughts you have also on top of that you're not acting on. And if you can focus and have some intentionality, I've done enough reflection that this idea that comes in my head, I know that it is authentic to me or inauthentic to me. I know that it is from a place of abundance versus a place of scarcity, right? Or a place of fear. Right, all of that happens. That's why I think it's so important to have done the necessary reflection on who you are. What does your name mean? What are my strengths? What are my values? Right? What stories do I have? Because I know that, okay, this is good. This is something I should act on. Do you know what I mean? So it's a way of filtering all of those ideas and all of those decisions, so that you're not wasting a bunch of time moving on something that you should have never moved on in the first place.
Exactly. So who is the ideal client for you, or who is identity architecture best suited for?
Well, like I said, ID Art was created for some of the poorest people in the world. You know, Madagascar is one of the poorest places in the world. I think it's 6th poorest nation in the world. And I created and crafted this framework specifically to help them navigate this, because I wanted it to be as simple as possible, right? So I'll just start there. And it was also created for inmates, right? People that have had their identities reduced to that of a number, right? My brother was in prison for 24 years. And as he was in prison, there's so many people that came up to him that didn't know who they were, right? That's where it started. So I just want to state that first.
For sure.
As far as my clients that I serve and pay me for this work, is built for founders, right? People that are bringing their idea to the marketplace and want to make sure that everything that they bring out is a part of who they are, that they're enthusiastic and energized and authentically aligned to everything that they create, because that's going to make it last and keep their energy going, right?
For sure.
It's created for design leaders that are managing design teams of people that have to make sure that everything that they do has an operating system so that they can manage their team better, right? And manage the creatives better. And I've worked with a lot of executive leaders, marketing directors, marketing executives, product leaders, because a lot of them have been almost kind of put in a box of sorts to have to operate like that organization does. And that organization usually hasn't done a lot of reflection as to like who they are as a team, as a leadership team, who their collective body is as an identity. And when they're launching a new product or they're not launching a new marketing campaign, have they done a necessary reflection to be able to infuse a identity into that product, right? That is authentically aligned with their brand, with their missions, with their values, so on and so forth. So we built this system, this operating system, in a way to help leaders better communicate, better be consistent with how they operate and with how they lead individuals.
So it sounds like as much as you guys are working with a brand, you're also working very diligently with individuals as well, and even just listening potentially even more closely with individuals. I guess my question then is, would this be another thing that would be, you would say, is important to also have as well with someone who's helping develop brand identity, that you should also have general identity architecture for perhaps yourself and then brand identity for your product business as well? Or are they hand in hand?
They're hand in hand. Some teams are one person. And
True.
usually the smaller the team, the more intimate their work is, and the more intimately involved they are in the work. The larger the team, the less intimately involved they are, right? The more corporate they are. So it's hand in hand. And it scales actually to larger teams or smaller teams. But it's a great question, Watts, because we created and made sure ID Art is at the foundation of all of the design work we do.
Okay.
Right? We do visual brand identity. We do product design. We do web design. We do all the design that you can think of, but it's all built on the foundation of ID Art.
Right.
And I like to tell my clients, ID Art and the work that comes out of that, the report that comes out of that is like a creative contract. Right?
Understood.
And we call it, like, that's going back, it's a creative operating system. So if we're going to be asked to create on behalf of a client, or design on behalf of this individual or on behalf of this team or on behalf of this organization, we better have done the necessary work to understand who they are.
Absolutely.
Right? And it becomes an operating system in which we can design even better than we could if it was just like, hey, we need this work done quick. And we realize that the projects aren't as good usually.
Of course not.
Right? Because we're just guessing, and we're actually probably bringing more of our identity into the work, rather than being able to fully embody the identity of the organization or the individuals that we're working with.
Understood. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's so important to figure out exactly who you are. It's so important to, like you said, just recently, like, how can you design for someone you don't know? Like, that's not a thing. So I've worked with another company that is into brand development, brand identity, marketing factors. And when we had a conversation initially, it was before we can even have our first conversation, here's a Google form. Fill this whole thing out. And there were so many questions and things that you wouldn't even think about as I'm just filling it out and just dropping information in there. And I realized that that's important for a company like theirs or like yours to be able to know who it is you're working with. Not just to say we know, but to even decide if it's worth working with somebody.
But that's assuming though, because that's typical, right? Most freelancers have a questionnaire or companies have questionnaires to fill out. That's typical. What that's assuming though is that the client knows who they are already. You know what I mean?
For sure.
That's assuming that the client knows how to answer that question. And that's what I realized over the years as I've been doing this consulting work, because I realize I'm a consultant. For sure. And a consultant's main job is to help their clients solve problems and work through those problems. So I realized that that's not good enough, because most of my clients, and no matter how big they are, I've worked with Fortune 500 companies or brand new startups, they don't know how to work through those questions, right? It's just like you ask somebody, who are you? They'd be like, I'm John. I'm a principal of a small, they usually start with their name. They go into their occupation or their career, right? Maybe they'll get into where they're from, what school they went to, what they got their degree in, so on and so forth. All of these things are what typically makes up somebody's identity to start, right? But what I realized over the years is that it is necessary to help people work through that, because they may be identifying with things that their dad identified with, or their company identifies with, or their country identifies with. And it's up to the consultant, not the designer, right? Not the brand designer or the product designer, the consultant, to help them work through those questions, right? And that's what I do. That's what ID Arc is all about. Is me. I'm an identity architect because I know how to help people work through the hardest questions. And usually the hardest questions are questions that are about you and your life and your experiences and your heart. Like, who are you? That's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think that with this particular company, I think that's why I enjoyed going through it. It was also frustrated going through it because there were surface level questions, but then there was stuff that I'm like, yo, what does this have to do with my brand or my business? But it was I think a thing to learn me or to see if I even knew how to answer these things. And when I sat down with them, after the fact, that was what a lot of that conversation was, is we need to know what you even know about you and about this business that you claim you want to be a part of. And if you don't know those things, then we see how much work we have to do. And we're really starting. Because what you're asking us for, we can't even get there without taking care of these precursors first. These prerequisites have to be met before we can even start to move forward. And I can understand that that's an important thing for you guys as well.
Yeah, the filtering mechanism for us is, are you even willing to do the work?
Exactly.
If you're not willing to do the work, we're not willing to do the work either.
For sure.
You know, that's how I look at it.
Can't help somebody that don't want to help themselves, man.
And that's what I realized over the years for me and individually as John, I'm not good at helping people that aren't ready to help themselves. I'm really terrible at it. I don't have patience.
I get it.
I just don't. I realized that there's people out there that are really good at helping people that aren't ready to help themselves.
Yeah.
Really good at it. I'm not. And then as I built a small studio, I realized that those are the people I want to work with. I want to work with people that are willing to do the work and that actually truly want to do the work, because that's what makes this thing very exciting for me.
Absolutely. So someone coming to work with a small studio, fire name, by the way, coming to work with a small studio, what can they expect from the process of going through identity architecture with you guys?
Yeah, so it usually starts with, we're not actually giving them a questionnaire. We're asking them for at least 5 people that we can talk to about them. So it usually starts with a intensive auditing around these individuals and teams, making sure we get a holistic perspective of it. If it is a team, we usually meet with the whole team, right? Get questions, ask those questions to them. And then we move into our trademarked workshop, which I facilitate. That workshop is actually pretty long. Take them through a series of exercises that help them filter. And that's what I'll say. I'll leave it at that.
This is a process that you and the team developed on your own?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So we crafted a workshop that helps teams and individuals filter out who they are, right? Filter out attributes, filter out experiences, and I make them make decisions, right? Like, you can't be all things to all people. You can't be everything. You got to be very, very focused. So I say all the time, branding is all about focus. So that workshop is all about working through the minutia, getting everything out, but then focusing and making decisions. Because if you're not making decisions, then, we got to do everything for all things, It's tough. So that workshop is about 8 hours, actually. We spread it over 2 days. And then...
that could be worse.
Oh, yeah. It could be way worse. And then we move into the narrative part. And that's, I think, what most people hire us for sure, is that they're looking for a narrative to be able to speak to. That's the operating system comes in, right? The strategy, the positioning, all of that. That narrative takes everything that they said, like they said these words. All right, here's what we heard you say, and we regurgitate it back to them in a more concise, right? Because we're consultants and we're experts in terms of what we're doing, concise way. And they take it and they're like, yep, that's us. And they use this report. And usually we use this report to then guide all the other creative work that we're going to do for them, whether it's the visual brand identity, naming, web design, product design, design systems, whatever it is that if they want us to design, we use that ID arc process to get the narrative in place that creates the operating system in which we create for them, right? So that's how it works. Typically, it's between 3 to 5 weeks that it takes for us to get there. My team probably wants more time, but I've realized that a lot of people we work with are moving pretty quickly, and they want more. But this is the precursor It's actually the foundational work that we do with all of our clients to make sure that we can execute on the proper name, brand design, web design, whatever it is that we're creating for them.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to have a process and streamline it down, I mean, you can get the job done. And you know, as an artist, I find myself picking at work. And it's like, there's a difference. There's always going to be a difference between finished and perfect. And it's like, perfect is unachievable. And I have to tell myself, we have to tell ourselves that it's not going to be perfect. You have to get to a point where you can be satisfied and be done. So, you know,
I like to think of, because we're in a creative field, right? The balance between perfect and done is really hard for most designers, right?
Yes.
And that has become my role as a creative leader, as a design leader. My role is to empower creatives to use their gifts to bring peace, right? And I've realized perfect is when my client has peace, right? If they now know how to make decisions, perfect.
Exactly.
If they now know and have more clarity on who they are, perfect, right? If they now know, or they see this thing visually, whether it's a logo mark or a name, or they hear the name or the website, whatever it is, and they're like, they can exhale because it's going to make their job easier. It's going to allow them to be more passionate about marketing themselves out or waving their flag or having their next event. Perfect, right? Yeah. It's not about what it looks like or is this pixel perfect or whatever. That's what I love about design, is it's not about us as a designer. It's not about me. It's about them. So it's perfect when they find peace in it. You know what I mean? And that's what we listen for. And that's why our mission at a small studio is to empower creatives to use their gifts to bring peace. Yep. And that's what I do every day with my teams. Hey, how are you using your gift today to bring peace? You know, that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, that is when it's perfect. And like you said, now they know how to make decisions. Then it turns into an ever evolving process, because now that they know how, it's like they're at a new beginning. So now they have work to do to even grow, continue to build and develop even more beyond that point. But once they went through this process, now they have an actual solid foundation.
They have a solid foundation to raise money. Some of my clients have raised over $40 million because of the work that we did with them. Right? They've multiplied their business times like 3, 4, right, over a couple of years. They've been able to build world-class teams. All these things, like all these results have come from just helping them find a little bit more clarity. Yeah. And honestly, finding peace in probably one of the most unpeaceful places, which is the marketplace. You know, everybody's busy, everybody's doing things, everybody's always time. I don't have enough time. And I tell people when they go through my workshop, I'm like, how often have you carved out 4 hours just to think about yourself?
Right.
Every time I ask that question, they're like, oh yeah. And it grounds them and it roots them in the space and allows them to be in the space rather than being on their next meeting or their next call and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, how often do you actually carve out time to focus on who you are? Most people don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's why this work, I feel, is actually so much more important than just the design and the branding and so on and so forth. Like, we're working to bring peace to people's lives. You know what I mean? And that's why a small studio is very different than most agencies, because we're not here to just design and create work and get clients. We're here to change people's lives, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, listen, I remember just recently speaking to what you said, seeing somebody talking about a quote that essentially got at the idea of people being so focused on the future that they completely neglect the present. And they're not experiencing it. So you're so worried about the future and what is to come, you're completely missing everything happening around you and not experiencing it. Then you're looking back on the past and thinking about moments that you missed because you were so worried about the future. And it's just a constant intermix. You have to be able to find that balance and be able to give time to yourself, time to your surroundings, as well as time for what is to come.
Yeah.
And to be able to work with a company like yours, to be able to give people that, I think that man, it's something that once it really takes off and people get a good grasp of that, it'll be it'll be time to maybe a name change to a large studio.
Mm-hmm. Always be a sponsor. No, because you're so on point. It's not even for the clients, it's for the individuals that are serving the clients. Are they carving out space to be able to understand who they are? Are they always constantly thinking about the future rather than being present? And we always talk about ID Arc being a crafted listening system. How do you listen if you're not present? Exactly. You can't listen.
Exactly.
And that's why people send out a spreadsheet, say, fill this out. Or they say, hey, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks with what we designed. Right? They're not spending the time listening to who they're serving, because it's more so about themselves versus who they're serving. And that, I think, is a skill set in itself. And especially in this world that we live in, this economy that we live in, it's all about quick and fast.
Yeah, but you also know how the design world works. And when you have people who are, admittedly, can be really good at what they do, and you're dealing with people on a very frequent basis who only kind of half know what they're looking for, half know what they want, then those designers are kind of taking their own sensibility and saying, okay, we can stop now and I'll get at you in 2 weeks because
I'll just do it.
Yeah, I'll just do it. But it's one of those things where it's almost a participation trophy. It's like, if I'm doing the work for you, you're never learning.
I feel like that is what's ruining our industry.
Agreed.
That's why creativity is under attack right now. Creativity is the first thing that's being let go from most organizations.
Exactly.
Right? The creatives are getting paid less now than ever. I had somebody reach out to me the other day where I quoted them our price, and he said, well, unfortunately, creativity isn't as valued as it once was. I'm like, what? That was the first time I ever heard that. And I now, as a design leader, as a creative leader, I realize that my role is shifting, where I'm here to stand for it, right? And almost not protect it, but fight for it.
Absolutely.
In a way, because what we're doing is we're teaching people that creativity can be accessed just like this.
Yes.
Go on, use AI, or, go hire, whoever Joe Schmo that you engage with versus, I remember when typically when I find creatives, I like to ask them, what are they passionate about? Right. And I want to engage them for their passions versus engaging them for the quick need and the quick fix that I need. Right. And that's why creativity is under attack right now, is because creatives are trying to do it too quickly. They're doing it too cheaply. Right. And they're just, it's more accessible than ever versus it being a craft, which it is. Being a crafted service, being a boutique service that is very intimate with human beings, a human service, right? It's not a robotic service, it's a human service, and you're paying to engage humans and to almost tap the probably most valuable resource in them, which is creativity, right? How you gonna, how I'll give my Cleveland accent now. How can somebody ask somebody to give their creativity for as cheap as possible?
Right.
That's like you giving away your time for as cheap as possible, which your time is very valuable also, right? Like it's just
something that doesn't come back.
It's ridiculous to me. And that's what I feel like as a creative leader, if I don't protect my designers and their time and only allow them to engage with people that truly care about the gift that they're giving them, then who am I? I'm just the next business person. And most agencies do that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
The thing is, it's that's why it's so important for not just for the work to get done, but for conversations like this to be had, for pieces of information, these talks to be put out there, because we're bombarded daily. Social media, there's something new dropping, there's something new out, there's a next wave, and everything is becoming more and more easily accessible. Things come out, it's very expensive at first, then it drops down, and now it's consumer ready, and people are all over the place, and now that is hitting us. It's hitting us as creatives, it's hitting us designers, it's hitting DJs, it's hitting engineers and producers. Everything is
commoditized.
Everything is turning into, it's like things that you had to go to an expert for forever are all becoming DIY. And people are willing to, and people are, just to get it done or to save a buck, people are going for it. And unfortunately, what we're now getting from that is an overload of mediocre everything. Everything sucks.
Yeah.
But because everything sucks, people are getting used to everything sucking. And it's like, what do we do? How do you counteract that? But like I said, it's these conversations here.
You counteract it by doing something that no one else can do.
Right.
And that's becoming one of none. You counteract that by, instead of trying to keep up with the Joneses and project and produce, you take the time to reflect, because that will help you see outside of the clutter, because it's just clutter.
Right.
One of my buddies said, he said, when new technology comes out, it's a race to mediocrity. Mm-hmm. Right? At the beginning, everybody's unique. If you're even using the technology, you're one of a kind, right? But as the technology becomes more and more and more, everybody's race to the middle, right? Race to the middle of mediocrity. It's what we were talking about earlier, right? Where people want to go to the low-hanging fruit. They want it to be easy, right? Creativity is not easy by any means. Creating uniquely is not easy. Coming out with something that's never been done before is not easy. It's very hard, and it takes a lot of time. And I see this thing on Instagram all the time. They say, disappear for 6 months, right? And come back and do something spectacular. Sometimes we just need to disappear and stop trying to just produce and create and all this stuff. Yeah. I will blame the creatives for the mediocrity, because they have settled to sell their services for cheaply. Right? For cheap. They've settled for doing it quicker. They don't hold their boundaries. So when I practice architecture, when I got my first job, they said, what is the future of architecture? I said, architecture is a commodity. Everybody can do it. And y'all are selling your buildings and giving away your buildings just as a service, and then handing over the keys and allowing the owners to benefit from them for years on end. Architects are liable for their buildings for 25 years.
That's crazy.
They're not profiting on those buildings typically, right? So this goes out, whatever. I blame the architects and the institutions that are there to support the architects for that. Because if you look at like healthcare, right, and doctors' offices, you ever go into the doctor's office and they tell you how much something costs, how much money, like, all right, you need a surgery, it's going to cost this much. They don't tell you that. You know when you find out is when you get the bill in the mail from your insurance company. Right? Yeah. They don't negotiate prices with their customers. Right. They negotiate the prices with the insurance company. So the customer doesn't even get a say. Right. And creative services alone, we're constantly negotiating with our customers. Right. And there's something to that, right? And meeting people where they are and making sure you're working with the right customers and so on and so forth. But at a certain point, everybody needs to stand for a standard of excellence. Yeah. Right. A standard of like, yo, if you're selling your creativity for this much money, you're actually hurting the entire industry. Maybe you should go get employed until you're ready to do it at a higher standard of excellence. For sure. Versus trying to be your own boss and to sell your services for cheaply because you're like, I don't want to go work anywhere. No. Like, so I don't know. I'm pretty passionate about it because
as you should be.
Like this is what's probably the most relevant thing right now in our industry. It's just the commoditization or the mediocrity of it. There's nothing mediocre about creativity when it's done right.
Right.
It's
and that's the thing. So when you have when you have so many creations coming from people who are not creative, it's gonna suffer. And that's what we have to deal with right now. With identity architecture, is the process done virtually or in person? I know you guys have team members in some different cities and things of the sort. How personal is the process?
Well, I've done it in person, virtually. It's been more convenient for people virtually. I mean, I even worked with clients here locally where I just did it virtually. because it actually allows for team collaboration a lot easier, right? Versus the in-person when, you got to do sticky notes or whiteboards and you got to, I don't know, people are getting up and distracting and so on and so forth. It's actually become very easy and beneficial to do virtual workshops. And we've actually, before COVID happened, we were doing things virtually.
Understood.
Back in Seattle, all of our clients were outside of Seattle. So we were serving them virtually before it became a standard in the industry. So now I actually lean into that. We use tools like Figma, FigJam, to remote everybody in, and it's almost a virtual whiteboard in a way that they can work through these things and collaborate and communicate with one another. So I like to prefer the virtual one. I also do individual workshops virtually, which sometimes I like the individual ones to be in person because it's a little more intimate.
Yeah,
right?
a personal touch.
So I would say both. Depends on your company and what your company's culture is like.
Gotcha. So what would you say is the best thing that a client or partner has said speaking to identity architecture?
We worked with a lot of people, man.
Congratulations.
I was talking to this founder earlier. He's the founder of Salt Athletic, which we ended up helping him name that company, Salt, which is one of my favorite names, by the way. His company is a technology that removes the odor from workout equipment. Specifically, he created a bag for cleats, like soccer cleats, or rugby cleats, or track cleats, or whatever it is. Instead of them stinking up your whole bag, he created technology that removed those odors. And that's how we came up with the name Salt, right? And it was early on in a small studio, but I talked to him about 3 years later, and he said, "John, the work that we did with you helped serve as almost a guidepost, a guide for us to make the right decisions as we scaled, as we went through the trenches, as I hired people, so on and so forth." And I remember him saying it because he was such a young founder. This was his first startup. It's like, wow, we gave him that operating system. We gave him that clarity that came from him, right? He did it. We just helped him see it, that literally served him through the trenches of entrepreneurship.
Gotcha.
And I don't know, it was really encouraging, I think, hearing it from a younger founder, right?
For sure.
But that clarity has been consistent throughout all of our clients, is they just have clarity to make decisions, which unfortunately isn't common.
Understood. You're right. And I unfortunately would agree. But as long as there are people who don't quite know where they're going, don't quite know who they are yet, you got clients.
Well, yeah, it's that easy. The biggest thing, I think, what I love about IDARC is that it separates us from the clutter.
Absolutely.
There's thousands of agencies out there. There's millions of designers, right? There's not many identity architects. And honestly, I'm one of the first people that I've ever heard identify with that term. And that's what I'm hopeful for the future of a small studio, is that we continue to lean into this unique perspective around design and actually not just empower ourselves to design better, but empower other designers and creatives to create better.
Yeah.
Right. And have that standard, like, don't design for people that you don't know.
Yeah.
Because then it's just selfish, honestly. And you're just doing it for the money.
I must say, right. There's nothing in it except for just a dollar amount that you're going to receive for it. And I try to be the same way.
There's nothing about design that's selfish. Design is one of the most selfless professions because you can't design you're designing for other people.
Right.
That's innately in the term. It's problem solving. You could solve problems for yourself, right? And you could keep them to yourself, and that's innately selfish, right? But you're designing typically to help people and to help something and to solve problems and to hopefully help your community. Yeah. Right. And that's what I love about IDARC is it helps people realize, like, yo, you don't just have to solve problems in your company and in your your job, you can solve problems at home. Right? Oh, I'm a father. Right? You ever
Absolutely.
reflect on who you are as a father, or as a mother, or as a grandpa, or whatever, like as a community leader, as a barber, right? As a community developer, or whatever it is, right? Like, yo, you can solve problems specifically because of who you are and what you went through.
Right.
And most of the times we just take on the identity of our father or our mother or our community or our city and so on. And it's just a replicate. You want to talk about mediocrity? That's how mediocrity happens.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh yeah, I'm from Cleveland, and this is how I act. This is how people in Cleveland act. Oh, I'm my father's child because this is what my father did. It's easy, and honestly, it's lazy.
Yeah. Self-reflection is a thing, man, and people very often are not in a space. It takes some work to get to a point where you can really ask that of yourself and say, who am I? And is this really right for me? Is this who I want to be? That's tough for some people. So I guess I would ask of yourself, have you faced that or dealt with that? Like, did you find yourself at a point where you were like, I am my mother, I am my uncle, I'm this, I reflected that back so much, and then have to determine who you were?
Every day. Are you kidding me? Yeah, every day, man. It is. That's why I call it a practice.
Understood.
It's not a one solution, right? Like when we work with clients,
man, that's unique, because that's what people don't understand. When doctors say they practice medicine, because there's not an end all be all. This is everything.
no matter what it is that you're doing, it takes practice, period.
Agreed.
So I call it a practice because it's a practice of reflecting on who you are. You should ask yourself that question every single day.
Absolutely.
Right? We were joking about that song, I Am Light, right? Like I sing it every day because I want to remember and reflect and practice, affirm it in myself that I am light, right? I affirm it in myself every single day that I am a father of my daughter. I am a husband of my wife. Every single day, that is a practice of who am I? Am I going to identify with this word today the same way I identified with it yesterday? Probably not. This doesn't happen the same. I'm different every single day. I think we all are, right? So with companies have a little longer lifespan, but they're different every employee that they add. They should probably be reflecting every client that they get. You know what I mean? Like every time you change or something shifts, you should be reflecting again. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I don't think many people understand. I've been going through this my entire life. I never knew my father. How am I supposed to be a father? The only way I could be a father is I could reflect within and realize like, oh, there's something here that will allow me to be a father I never had.
Exactly.
Right? And I think that's a form of spirituality. And I like to think that creativity is a very spiritual practice.
Absolutely.
But sometimes people are afraid of being spiritual. So they just decide to do it the way that they know it.
I think that, well, it's 1 o'clock, so I know you're ready to get out of here.
I'm vibing. Time is it?
Hey, Adam, is the front door open? It is. All right, cool.
I think I locked it when he left. You.
Yeah, I got a lot on my other camera, so you good on there. I was just over there like stopping and starting so I can get as much footage on you while you was talking or whatnot. But this one, we still got time to deal with this one.
No, I got you. Well, yeah, I got to walk through. So they about to literally walk through. They can do that.
Well, we could be done.
Oh no, I'm saying like we're through the questions. So
Yeah.
I was getting ready to.
I think we got some good stuff.
Oh, I think that's great shit.
Yeah. What do you think?
So I'm gonna.
I think I got some really, really good stuff.
Bro, listen.
You hit some
Great.
points.
For sure.
Just you
For sure.
valuing yourself because of it. That's like a photographer, you go through that all the time.
Absolutely.
That's like how our photographers emerge in the city, like price points is like the main thing that shifts the economics in photography in Cleveland.
You know what to that point, this might be a good way of wrapping it up. I feel like we've gotten away from this idea of apprenticeship and internship, and it's almost a humbling thing to have to just walk with somebody or watch somebody and learn from somebody, right? Like that practice, I think, has gone to the wayside. And something I've realized at a small studio is that there's so much talent out there, and they are craving mentorship. They're craving a space that's actually going to see them for who they are and cultivate that and allow them to fail and allow them to mess things up and to break things, right? And that's what I've been working on, transitioning a small studio into that, where, you know, over the summer we do an internship, and last summer we got 850 applicants from probably 40 different countries all over the world, right? And I realized that they are craving a space that will see them for who they are, but also allow them to fail and also allow them to craft their experiences. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what all of us as leaders should be doing, is creating an environment that allows these young creatives who are just transitioning or entering the field, or maybe even transitioning their career to something else. Maybe they're not even young, maybe they're older, but to give them a space, right, to just create,
To find themselves.
and find themselves, right, and find their gifts and so on and so forth. And I think that that's what has led to where we are as an industry in general.
Yeah.
Is because that's people aren't willing to do that.
Absolutely.
People
And
aren't willing to mentor.
they're not. And that's tough. And again, that is another thing that makes these kind of conversations so important, because for every one of you or one of myself, somebody who is willing, there are 100 who aren't. All right, good people. Listen, I am BKA Watts, wrapping it up here today at Lounge's Content Studio with my man, John Johnson, the principal identity architect of A Small Studio. You got anything else that you want to drop on the people before we roll up out of here?
Just take a moment, man. Just reflect more before you project. And I would just encourage you to ask yourself that question. Who are you?
Who you is, man. We up out of here. Appreciate you. Shout out to Lounge's Content Studio and my man Photo Cred Ned, man. Make sure y'all go follow. Make sure y'all tapped in. Make sure y'all go follow A Small Studio. And we out here in these streets, as you can see.